The journey of integrating the shadow doesn't just have to do with your trauma and suppressed memories and suppressed emotions. There's also primal parts of yourself that you want to connect with, because just like that trauma, these primal energies will run your psyche and will run your life in different ways if you suppress them. Because just because you suppress them doesn't mean they don't have an influence and doesn't mean they're not there. You're just kind of taking a blind eye to them. But this energy on a 3D human level is going to be the foundation of what we are. You cannot truly understand anything if you don't understand the roots of where that thing comes from. So when it comes to spiritual self-development, yes, we are consciousness, we are energy that predates our human experience and predates the physical body, but we have chosen to experience many incarnations in a physical vehicle. So a part of our journey here as souls is understanding the origins of the physical vehicle that we have chosen. And human beings began in a very primal energy, going back to the very formation of human civilization. We were a hunter-gatherer kind of civilization, and we evolved up into the point where we are at today, but those roots are still there. And even though we're not living in that way anymore, we're not in the forest, like necessarily hunting for our food or, having to kill each other and things of that nature. We are still very much influenced by this primal animalistic energy inside of us, because we are absolutely still animals. We're just, very intelligent animals. So, with that being said, when it comes to spiritual self-development, you want to understand your primal roots. And I believe you want to connect with what I like to call the animal self. The animal self is that energy that we eventually, kind of evolved out of, but it's the root of what we are, and it's still very active within our psyches. We may not be consciously influenced by it. We may not be perceiving it or connecting with it. A lot of people are suppressing it, but that doesn't mean that it's not there. And there's a lot of power and evolutionary potential in connecting with the animal self. In fact, even when we're looking at systems of occult initiation like Kabbalah, as you're receiving spiritual gnosis, as you're going through the initiatory process of soul development and you're moving up the tree, when you get to Kether, you will actually shoot that energy and that initiatory momentum back down, and you're going to ground it, excuse me, ground it into the root chakra. You're going to ground it into Malkuth. And when we're talking about the initiatory process, Malkuth is directly associated with the root chakra. And the root chakra is going to be an association with the animal self. Now, you can work with your animal self in the form of different animal spirit guides, or what some people would call animal totem spirits. And the way I like to do this is by working with the spirit of the wolf. Many ancient cultures held the wolf spirit and just the wolf in general in a very high regards. They looked at the wolf as a familiar spirit, as a spirit guide. In fact, we actually share, I believe, about 80 or 84% of our genetic structure with canines, with wolves. So when we're working with the wolf spirit, we're working with this suppressed aspect of our shadow self that absolutely has its own intelligence. And once again, even though most people are not connecting with this, it has an influence over what we do, what we want, what we think about, and we can even say what we manifest in our lives because it's an energy inside of us. And everything that we manifest in our reality is going to be different parts of us, different parts of our energetic structure, and our overall resonance pushed out, and then it's reflecting itself back to us in the form, of what we accomplish, different relationships, our job, what happens at work, and, things of that nature. Our entire external reality is just going to be reflecting back to us our internal world, our internal state, and our internal reality. So when we're talking about shadow work, we want to connect with all of these different parts of us, including the more so primal parts, including what I like to call the animal self. And this is why ancient cultures would actually work with the spirit of the wolf. And many different cultures would actually get into something that is known as shapeshifting, to where on the astral plane, they would actually shapeshift into different spirit animals. Shamans are very well known for doing this. Even Norse warriors would call on the spirit of the wolf. They would invoke the spirit into their body, and then they would go into battle because they knew as they was channeling this energy through their subconscious, it was going to cause them to take on certain physical attributes that that wolf or that wolf spirit was in connection with. So strength, stamina, being extremely violent and ferocious when they needed to. Now, I'm not saying you want to go out in society and kill anyone or anything like that, but there are massive benefits to connecting with the animal self in whatever way you choose to do that. And once again, I like to do that by connecting with the spirit of the wolf. And there are many cultures that have done this throughout our human history in different ways. So I've had some really cool experiences with this wolf spirit. I do practice what is known as shape-shifting, where I will transform my astral body into the spirit of the wolf, and I will roam the astral plane for different purposes. Um, where do I want to go with this? So I'm going to be telling you an experience that I actually had on psilocybin, so mushrooms, a couple of years ago. And this was like a spontaneous shape-shifting experience that I was not planning to necessarily have, and it just kind of happened randomly. So I went to the cemetery and, I was under the influence of mushrooms, and I was going to do a ritual to these different entities that I was working with at the time. And it didn't really seem to be working, and I kind of felt like a frustration come over me. It wasn't working the way I planned it to. I didn't really feel anything that was taking place. Now, as this frustration came over me, I went into a very primal state of being to where I dropped to the ground, I got on all fours, and I started making like these animalistic noises. I started gritting my teeth, my muscles started tensing up, and I started seeing like a wolf inside of my mind, and I could see my astral body beginning to transform into that of the wolf, into essentially a werewolf. I was like a half human, half wolf in that astral state that I was kind of, being pushed into spontaneously. Once again, I did not plan this. Now, as I'm going through this transformation, I look up and I see that physical coyotes had run out of the woods and were observing me. And when they noticed that I was like seeing them looking at me, they ran back into the woods. And of course, at first, there was maybe a slight little bit of fear there, but I allowed myself to continue to go through this astral shape-shifting experience. And when I looked up again, I noticed that the coyotes were still looking at me, but from inside of the woods. There were like bushes and brush and stuff like that, and I could see their eyes glowing, just observing, just watching. And I felt this sense of very deep connection between me and the coyotes. And I knew that even though they were physical coyotes, they were also like nature spirits, if that makes sense. I went to that cemetery not knowing what was going to happen, and I just happened to be in the right place at the right time to have this spontaneous experience take place for me, and then for those coyotes to just happen to be close enough to come across me. I knew none of that was random, and it was absolutely influenced by the spirit of the wolf. We can say, the primal soul of the earth and my higher self. And this is an experience that I will never forget. Now, there's another time, and I have videos and I have a photo of this, and plenty of people have seen this, where I was in this room right here a couple of years ago, and an orb flew by my face. And the mother of my child was here, and she actually saw it before me. So when she noticed it, that's when I noticed it. And I just had like the intuitive feeling that I should pull out my phone and start recording the window. So I did. And as I was recording the window, I noticed there was this smoky apparition. So what I did is I took a screenshot, or what I think is called a still shot, of that video, and when you look at it, it's a giant wolf head coming through the window. So over time, I came to the conclusion that this wolf spirit totem animal is something that has been with me for a very long time, but I wasn't necessarily always aware of it. And after this, I started doing more conscious rituals where I would connect with the spirit of the wolf, and therefore I would connect with my animal self, some of the deepest, most primal aspects of the collective unconscious I was connecting with in the form of that wolf spirit. And this goes back to, we share DNA with wolves. So whenever we're connecting with that wolf spirit, we're connecting with this subtle energetic memory inside of us. And rather than suppressing it or ignoring it, we're bringing it to the surface, which has so many benefits when we're talking about shadow integration. Shadow integration is not just about integrating our trauma, it's about integrating all of the suppressed aspects of ourself and bringing them, into our present moment state of awareness. So now all of the aspects of our energetic structure and our psyche are on board with our true will and our ultimate benefit. So I view the wolf spirit as being kind of like the idea of an egregore. I think it's a collection of consciousness that has been built up over time and is comprised of the individual spiritual essence of every wolf that exists on our planet now, and every wolf that has ever existed. And I almost view this spirit as being like the higher intelligence of these animals. And also I view this as being an externalized aspect of the spirit of nature and an externalized aspect of the most primal parts of our own shadow, because we share 84% of our, genetics with canines, with wolves. So any part of ourself we can actually externalize and we can work with as a spiritual intelligence. So I think that this is a part of what's going on when we're working with the spirit of the wolf and when other cultures have worked with this spirit as well. So there are many benefits to working with the wolf spirit. If you're in the psychic warfare, what you can do is you can astrally shapeshift into the form of a wolf, and then you can go psychically damage your opponent, which will cause real physical effects to manifest for them in their life. And as to what those are, it just depends on you and depends on the person. If you need some type of courage to, I don't know, make it through some type of difficult circumstance, you can invoke that intelligence and you can bring out that primal courage to make it through whatever that is. Um, if you feel like you need drive or determination or enthusiasm when it comes to something that you're trying to accomplish, you can also invoke the wolf spirit for that determination and for that drive. Maybe you have a paper to finish. Maybe there's some exercise that you're trying to do. Maybe you're an athlete, right? Let's say you were like a football player or something like that, or you're on a wrestling team or whatever it is where there's a lot of, you know, physical, hands-on type of experience that's happening. Well, you can invoke the wolf spirit, and this is going to give you that boost of energy and that boost of drive that you need to be more successful at whatever that thing is for you. The spirit of the wolf can even support you in healing through trauma, because this kind of goes back to what I was saying about like courage and drive and determination. When we're talking about connecting with the wounded inner child, this can be scary. There's a lot of, sometimes there's certain memories that are suppressed and there's heavy emotions that we don't want to feel, but we know we need to go into those parts to be a more authentic version of us. Well, if you're having trouble doing that, you can invoke the spirit of the wolf and you can actually visit some of these parts that are frozen in the past, and you can visit some of these traumatic memories that you might have as that, as that spirit. Essentially, you can astrally shapeshift and then you can go visit the past self and experience all of the different emotions that are associated with that past self, so you can start integrating the part of you that is carrying the burden of that past self. You integrate that part back into the whole of your awareness, and you can set this in motion by connecting with the spirit of the wolf. So there are so many benefits to connecting with spirit animals and the spirit of the wolf in general, which is more so what this video is meant to be about, because it relates heavily to my personal experience.